Hey y'all, in today's video, I'm going to take you along with me as I show you how I made 5 different dinners for my family. 4 were new recipes and 1 was an oldie but a goodie. If this is your first time coming across my channel, I post videos of pretty much anything food related. I do these dinner videos. I also show lunchbox ideas for my kids and husband. I used to do grocery hauls. I'm thinking of bringing that back. I love showing different appetizer recipes, sometimes breakfast. You get the idea. I am so passionate about searching for the best recipes and recreating them, and I spend a lot of time on it. I understand the challenge of, every day trying to come up with what to cook. So if you aren't already, let me help you and follow along. It's going to be a great year. We started the year off strong with this pepperoni pizza chili. Oh my goodness, I do not even have the words to tell y'all how much that we love this. Absolutely a new favorite. If you like pizza and you like chili, then you have got to give this a try. So you start off by browning up 2 pounds of ground beef. I really like to buy this ground chuck at my local Save-A-Lot. It is just so fresh, and anytime I use it in a dish, I swear I can tell a difference. I feel like it is a little bit pricey per pound, but to me, it's worth it. I really do try to keep things budget friendly, but there's just some things you can't help. But really, when you break it down, that package was a little over $11. I have a family of 4, and this made 2 separate meals for all of us, and really hefty portions too, so that's good in my book. So anyways, while that meat is browning on the stove, over to the side here I have grabbed a green bell pepper. I've washed it really well, and I'm just going in and dicing that up. I did get a new knife set for Christmas, so I'm trying to get familiar with the knives. I always get a little bit nervous when I get new knives because of how sharp they are. I am notorious for accidentally cutting myself. I actually did at some point in this video, but not for this meal. But the recipe actually only called for half of the bell pepper, but I decided to just use the whole thing. For one, if I was to put that other half in the fridge, there's a chance it would have gone to waste, and I don't like that. And also, I just really love bell peppers, especially in anything like pizza flavored. So after I got that diced, I went back on over to the stove, tossed it in with the ground beef, and it also calls for an onion to be chopped up and cooked with the ground beef and peppers. You don't know already, I don't cook with onions. I've just always been that way. I don't like them. Maybe that'll change one day, but for right now, I like sticking with the onion powder. So I did add plenty of that to season the ground beef with, and the recipe didn't call for salt and pepper, but I pretty much always add that when I'm cooking any kind of meat. So that's just how we like it. But now, as you can see, that meat is fully cooked. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the excess grease. I do this in multiple different ways. On this day, I decided to just take a few paper towels and let that kind of soak up and absorb the grease, and then toss it out. So now, over to my crock pot. As you can see, there's a little bit of a white film there. I promise it's clean. Just sometimes when I take it out of the dishwasher, that happens. Not every time, and I don't know why that happens. So if any of y'all have any tips and tricks on how to prevent that, definitely let me know. I mean, it's not the biggest deal, but it does kind of annoy me a little bit. But anyways, I got all of that ground beef added to the bottom of my crock pot, and now I'm just going to dump everything else in. So you need a 15-ounce jar or can of pizza sauce. We are huge fans of the Chef Boyardee pizza sauce. So good, and it's on the saltier side. It's not sweet like a lot of pizza sauces, so I feel like it works really well here. Also did an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, a 15-ounce can of these ranch-style beans, and I did not drain them. I'm also going to do a 15-ounce can of these sliced stewed tomatoes. Again, juice and all. You want all that good stuff that's in there. And then the most interesting part to me is the pepperonis. You're going to add in this whole bag. This is just your standard size bag. It's like 3.5 ounces, I think, something like that. We love pepperonis, and it just works so good in this dish. I'm adding in 1.5 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. I eyeballed in some garlic powder, and the recipe calls for a teaspoon of chili powder. I decided to double that and do 2 teaspoons because I really wanted that flavor to kind of pop out a little bit. I definitely wanted everyone to know that it is some sort of chili. But here I'm just going in and giving everything a really good stir, getting everything nice and combined. And then I'm going to add my lid. And I did get this started a little bit later than what I intended. So I'm cooking mine on high for about 4 hours. But you can cook this on low like all day while you're out and about. So, to go along with it, I'm going to make some Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits. I like to buy the big box at Costco, and this was my last batch that I had left in the pantry, and I figured it would go good with this. I'm excited to talk about this because I'm going to be making them different than what the box says. And by the way, I did get one of those like viral TikTok cheese graters for Christmas. Josh got me that, and I thought it was kind of funny because I've always kind of wanted one, but I didn't necessarily need it. That's why I never asked for one or got it myself, but the fact that I got one did excite me. I have been loving it. This was my first time using it though, and I'm just shredding up a block of sharp cheddar cheese. Now, the last time I made these, I followed this idea, which I got from Dinner in 321. I saw it on TikTok, but she is on all the social medias that there is. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I think she was raised where I'm from, which is even cooler. I really like her ideas. But okay, so basically you're following the box instructions, but instead of using milk, you're going to swap that for buttermilk, which I really like because I almost always have that in the back of my fridge, and I have a hard time using it up, although I have started to freeze it because I don't like wasting again. And also, the box says to use 1/2 cup of cheese. She says to use 1.5 cups of cheese, so that's what I'm talking about. I did do closer to a cup of the buttermilk versus the 3/4 of a cup that it says, because, you know, sometimes with these they can be a little bit dry and crumbly. That definitely fixes the issue. I was a little bit worried about it at first because it seemed like a little bit too wet as I was putting it on the cookie sheet, but they baked up perfect. And also, as you can see, I melted down the butter like you're supposed to. I added in the seasoning and brushed it all over the hot biscuits. And she recommends to take some dry dill and just sprinkle that all over top of the biscuits. And I'm telling you, all of those tips is a game changer. These are so delicious, the perfect little side, and so easy. At this point, the pizza chili is ready, so I went ahead and ladled that into all of our bowls, and then I'm just going to take some of this whole milk shredded mozzarella cheese and just add a couple of pinches over top of all of our bowls. As this gets stirred in, it melts in so perfectly, and it's just truly the perfect final touch to it. Of course, I've got one of those garlic cheddar biscuits on the side to dip in, and just overall, this was such a delicious meal. As for this chili, the flavors and the textures was just perfection, and I just thought it was such a fun and unique recipe. I've never seen this before, I've never heard about it, and I just know it's going to be one of those things that I make for all of my years to come, and I'm just so happy that everyone in the family loved it just as much. Up next, I'm going to be making a hibachi chicken and rice. You start this one off on the stovetop and then it gets finished in the oven. This dish seriously impressed me. So the first thing I'm going to do is start making a marinade for my chicken. So in this bowl, I've got 5 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of this rice vinegar. This bottle has some weird stuff floating in it. I just recently bought it. It wasn't expired or anything, and Google said it was fine, so we're just going to go with it. I also added in a teaspoon of black pepper, and I've already had this ginger paste in my fridge. I added just a small amount in here because the last time I used that in a dish, I used way too much and it overpowered it. But if you don't have that paste, you could definitely use fresh ginger. I've actually never done that. Maybe I should soon. You can also use ground ginger, just whatever you have, whatever you want to use. But that's it for the marinade, just a few ingredients. And now I'm just taking some boneless, skinless chicken thighs and dipping both sides down into that marinade and making sure it's covered. I think that was maybe 7 chicken thighs. I really didn't count or pay attention, but it's half of a family pack from like Walmart. But I got that covered tightly with some cling wrap, and I actually did that the night before. So this had a long time to marinate in the fridge, so you already know it's going to be super flavorful. So here we are when it's dinner time. I've got my large Dutch oven out, and I heated up a couple tablespoons of olive oil. This is on about a medium-high heat, and I'm just looking to brown both sides for about 2 to 3 minutes per side. If I was trying to fully cook this during this step, I definitely wouldn't overcrowd the pan like I am here, but since, like I said, it is going to get finished in the oven, I'm not worried about it. Also, remember that I said that the dish does go in the oven to finish off, so you want to make sure that the dish that you are searing everything in is oven safe before you stick it in the oven, because not every dish is, if you didn't know that. And if you don't have a dish like that can do both, you can just simply transfer it to a casserole dish. No big deal at all. So now that both sides of that chicken is browned, I'm going to go ahead and remove it to a separate plate. Something else that I really love about this recipe is that marinade that the chicken soaked in does not get tossed out like a lot of marinades do. We're actually going to reuse that here in a second. So you're going to need some rice. This is the one that I love to buy. Love this brand. I like the jasmine rice, and this big bag lasts me forever. So I measured out 1.5 cups of it, and I washed it really well, a few times actually. Dumped that into the bottom of my pot where all those chicken drippings were. I added in a big spoonful of minced garlic. I just used the stuff from the jar this night. And this is another one of those recipes that calls for an onion to be sauteed. So I just swap that with lots of onion powder, and I'm just stirring this real good, and just kind of sauteing the rice, kind of toasting it up. And then I'm going to take that leftover marinade, dump it on in the rice. So we got all that good flavor in there. And then I just added in 1 can of chicken broth, which equals 2 cups. So I turned that heat up a little bit. I waited for that chicken broth to start boiling. And then I'm just going to take that seared chicken that I did earlier and just put that right on top of the rice. And I will, of course, add all of the drippings that accumulated on that plate right back into the pot. So I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. So I just added the lid to my Dutch oven, and I'm going to pop the whole thing in for about 30 minutes. So while that is baking, I'm going to get started on the sauce that gets drizzled over the top. This recipe is included with a chicken and rice recipe that I'm going to link in my description box. I did cut the recipe for it in half, and it's just a 1/2 cup of mayo, a tablespoon of ketchup, a 1/2 tablespoon of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 tablespoon of paprika, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and a teaspoon of rice vinegar, and just a small splash of water to kind of thin everything out just a little bit. And you just simply combine that together real good. And I really like that I almost always have all of those ingredients on hand anyway, so I can pretty much make this at any given time that we want it. You definitely don't have to have this sauce with the meal, but I feel like it does tie everything together. So here's that chicken and rice once it's fully cooked. I know it's not the prettiest thing, but boy, is it tasty. And I'm pretty sure I've never done like a chicken and rice in a Dutch oven, in the oven. So I was worried about how that rice would cook up, but it cooked up so perfect and fluffy, and the flavors were just phenomenal. I served it with a side of sauteed zucchini. It's got a little bit of butter and garlic salt on it, and it was just such a good meal, and the leftovers of it was really good as well. Up next, I'm going to be making some meatloaf sliders, and I'm also going to show y'all how I make my fried potatoes and pea salad. So the very first thing I got started on was the pea salad because I like to make it several hours in advance. So I just do 1 can of drained peas. I add that to a small mixing bowl, and we love hard-boiled eggs in our pea salad. I like to do 2 per can of peas, and then I'm just going to add in a couple spoonfuls of mayo, and I'm going to season it with some salt, pepper, and onion powder. I know this sounds and looks weird if you've never had it before, but we seriously love it so much, and there's so many different ways to make it. The very first time I ever heard about pea salad was from my mother-in-law. She's no longer with us, sadly, but that pea salad is one of Josh's favorite things that she made, and all she did was peas, mayo, onion, and salt and pepper. I really need to recreate that for him soon. I know it would make him happy. I've also done a cheese cheese and bacon version. But anyways, got that sit in the fridge, and now I'm going to get started on these meatloaf sliders. So you need 1 1/4 pound of ground beef, and you need a package of this meatloaf seasoning. I'm using the one by McCormick, and I just got both of those things dumped into a casserole dish, and I'm just going in with my hands, getting that all mixed together. Now, this meal and the other two that I am about to show, these are things that I had to rush and get the ingredients for. I had to rush with the meal plan because we got a huge snowstorm where I knew that we would be stuck in the house for a few days. I got the ingredients for this right before the snow hit, so the grocery stores were crazy. I'm sure a lot of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about, and they were out of a lot of stuff, so I was lucky to get what I could get. But anyways, so you're supposed to shape this into the bottom of this dish. I couldn't figure out how to make that work, so I just figured this right here would work. I want you to pay attention to that. But I popped that in the oven at 350 for like 20 minutes. And while that meat is cooking, I'm going to get started on the fried potatoes. I prefer to use russet potatoes for fried potatoes, and I like to peel them over a grocery bag. That way I can just toss them when I'm done and, get to cutting. But I always use a potato peeler to peel my potatoes, and mine was in the dishwasher, and the dishwasher was running. So I had to use my paring knife. I haven't had to do that in so long, and it is something that I am really not good at. Again, I was nervous about it, and it took me a lot longer than what it normally does. But once I finally got them all peeled, I did go and wash them real good. And I always cut my potatoes different for fried potatoes, but the last handful of times, this is what I've been liking. For the small potatoes, I like to cut it down the middle once, turn it around and slice it. And then for the bigger potatoes, I like to cut it into 4 sections and then just dice it into kind of thick sections, I would say. I definitely don't want them thin. Here lately anyways. But I got this electric skillet from my parents. This is my first time using it. I love the size of it. I love all that surface area. So yeah, I've never used an electric skillet before. I'm happy to have it. I like to cook my fried potatoes in butter and oil. Sometimes I do vegetable oil and sometimes I do olive oil. I did do olive oil on this night. I started this skillet out on medium, but that thing got hot so fast, like insanely fast. It cooks really hot, so I did turn it down a bit. And I've been liking to season them lately with sea salt, Lorry seasoned salt, black pepper, onion, and garlic powder. Really love that flavor combination. And here I just like to give it a really good stir and toss. That way I know every single one of those potatoes is going to be coated in all that butter, oil, and seasonings. I want every one of those to be tasty. So I'm just going to get that covered with a lid and scooch that on over to the side. I'm going to let it cook until it's tender. I do come in and stir it every now and then. But at this point, that meat was ready from the oven, so I'm grabbing my Hawaiian slider buns. I was happy that these were, already cut, unlike the Hawaiian rolls that I have a lot of trouble with. But I kind of think that those would have worked better for this recipe. You're about to see why. I want y'all to look at this. I bet y'all can already guess. Now, I've been cooking for a long time. I know how much hamburgers shrink up, but I did not expect it to shrink up this bad. So here I am trying to improvise. I try to overlap the bottom buns to make it fit the hamburger meat, and it was still not working out. So I had to pause for a second, collect myself, and just ponder on what in the world am I going to do, because regardless, this is still going to be our dinner. So I decided to take it off, kind of overlap it even more, smush it down, and it ended up working out. So we're just going to go with it. I also need to make a glaze to go over the meat, because what's a meatloaf without the glaze? So we're just going to make a quick little sauce here. So it's 1/3 cup of ketchup, 2 tablespoons of mustard, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and a heaping tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, because I decided to just finish off the rest of that bottle, cleaning up my messes as I go. And I'm just going to get this really good and combined. I will say I only ended up being able to use about half of this sauce in the dish. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the size of my meat. It'd probably work out better if you actually patted out that meat all the way like you're supposed to. But that sauce did not go to waste. We just, dipped our sliders in it on the side. So I'm also going to grab some of these French's crispy fried onions. I actually don't mind these. These are pretty good. But I decided to only do that on half of the sliders because I just know how my kids are. And now I'm just taking some shredded cheese and layering that over everything. I had every intention of hand shredding some sharp cheddar, but after the shrunken burger incident and the peeling of the potatoes, I was running out of time. I was really behind, so I was kind of rushing at this point. So I got those top buns put on top, kind of looking like a TP. It's all right. I just melted down 2 tablespoons of butter in the microwave for like 30 seconds, and I'm just simply brushing that all over the top with my silicone brush. And then I'm just going to take a big piece of tinfoil, get this dish tightly covered, and that's going to go back in that 350-degree oven for a final 20 minutes. So here's my fried potatoes after they are done. These look perfect to me. I like when half of them are like brown and crispy, the other half is kind of pale, and everything is just so tender, so flavorful, and I love how this skillet cooked up these potatoes. I am not joking when I say it probably cut the cooking time in half. I did not expect that, but these just cooked up so much quicker than what they do in a skillet on the stove. So this is definitely going to be my designated pan to cook fried potatoes in, and I can't wait to see what else cooks up good in it. But here's those sliders straight from the oven. I will say these cut really nicely. Sometimes it's kind of hard to cut sliders, but these cut really good. And here's my plate. I've got 2 of those sliders with a little small bow on the side of that extra glaze to dip it in. I've got my fried potatoes with some ketchup drizzled over it, and I've of course pulled out that pea salad so it's nice and cold. I've added extra black pepper to it, and these sliders came out tasty. They all got ate up. But if you guys have any tips on how I could have spread that meat out better, let me know, because I really would like to try and recreate these at some point, because again, I think it is a good idea. On this night, I made some chicken and stars soup. This was so cozy and perfect for a snowy day in, and I knew that my kids would absolutely love it. So the very first thing that I did was get my veggies chopped up. So here is 3 medium carrots that I peeled and chopped, and then 2 stalks of celery that I diced up. I also went ahead and chopped up a few cloves of fresh garlic, and I did also go ahead and lay out 3 tablespoons of butter. So I am going to be cooking all of this in my Dutch oven. So I started it on a medium heat. I dropped in that butter and let it melt, and then I'm just tossing in the carrots and celery. Again, if you do like onions, chop you up one and throw it in at the same time as the other veggies. So I am seasoning those with some onion powder and a good pinch of salt and pepper, and I'm just going to saute these around and cook them down for a bit. I want these to be almost all the way softened. I let these go maybe 10 to 12-ish minutes. Definitely did not want those to be crunchy throughout the soup. So as you can see, they've cooked down good at this point. I threw in that garlic as well as a half a teaspoon of some poultry seasoning, and I'm just gonna let that garlic cook for maybe a minute, maybe a little less, and I'm gonna throw in about 1.5 cups of some cooked and shredded chicken. So I just simply pulled that away from a rotisserie chicken, and then the recipe calls for anywhere from 7 to 8 cups of chicken stock. 7 was perfect for us. It was still really brothy. And then I'm also going to add in the rind of a Parmesan block. That always adds a nice little special touch to soups. And then this is the star pasta that I'm going to be using. I found this at Walmart, and you are supposed to measure out a cup of it. Next time I would just dump in the whole bag because there was just a little bit left in there anyways. Really don't know what I'm going to do with that small amount next time, but I'll figure out something. But once that came up to a simmer, I let that cook for about 8 minutes. Tested it. The pasta was done, so I added in the juice of half of a lemon. It does call for fresh parsley. I'm not the biggest fan of that, so I just save money and use the dried stuff. We're perfectly fine with that. So poured some of that in there, and then I went fishing for that Parmesan rind because it's just going to be rubbery and useless. So I got that out of there, and now this soup is ready to be served. Now, obviously, the longer you let this sit, the more that pasta is going to soak up the broth, but we did not have that problem because we ate this whole pot right away. So keep that in mind. I would say this recipe makes 4 good-sized servings, but yeah, it was still plenty of broth in our bowls. I was perfectly happy with it. Wouldn't change a single thing. So after I ladled it into our bowls, I topped it with some freshly shredded Parmesan cheese, some extra parsley, and a slice of lemon. So here's all of our bowls put together. Everyone loved it. I would absolutely make it again. And if you are extra hungry, I recommend a grilled cheese on the side. Lastly is a tried and true. I have made many different variations of this over the years, and it's always such a hit, and it's just so simple. It's a sausage, green bean, and potato casserole. This could even be like a side dish at a cookout, but we really like it as a main course. So let's dive on in how to do it. So I've got this bag of little yellow baby potatoes. This is about 1.5 pounds that I have here, and I'm just going to give those a quick rinse, and then I'm just going to simply take them one by one and just slice those in half. If your baby potatoes are any bigger than this, I highly recommend quartering them, but really it's just a preference thing. You just kind of have to adjust the cooking time. But now that they are all washed and cut, I'm going to get those transferred to a large mixing bowl where I'm going to get them drizzled in some olive oil, and we're going to season them up. So I'm doing some Slap Your Mama Cajun seasoning, some garlic powder, black pepper, and just a little bit of some crushed red pepper flakes. I love those, but my family's not big on spice, so definitely cutting back, which that's all good. So got that all tossed together, and I'm gonna grab my smoked sausage. This is my first time ever buying a family pack of them. I typically just grab the normal rope of it, but I wanted a little bit extra because I planned on having this for lunch for all of us the next day as well. So what's left in that package, I will put in a freezer bag, pop it in the freezer for another meal another time. So I'm just gonna slice these into, I would say, medium size pieces, not too thin, not too thick, but again, that's just a personal preference thing anyways. So now that all of those are sliced up, I am going to get these frying up in a skillet with about a 1/4 cup of water. That way it kind of steams everything and it doesn't just straight up burn. So basically I'm just waiting for that water to evaporate and to get the color that I'm looking for, which is this right here. Highly recommend not skipping this step. I'm sure, you could throw in the cold sausage into the oven and let it bake. It would still be good, but frying it up like that adds such a depth of flavor. Seriously, just don't skip it. So in that same skillet, I've turned that heat down a little bit, and I'm going to melt down 4 tablespoons of butter. Again, this recipe wants you to saute onions in that butter, so do that if you like it. I'm skipping it. I did a big spoonful of minced garlic from the jar and some onion powder. I knew that regardless, this garlic butter sauce would be so good over everything in the casserole. The last thing that I added in that bowl was 2 cans of green beans that I drained. You definitely don't want to put that in the bottom or they'll just get straight up smushed. And then, of course, I'm putting that garlic butter sauce over it. And with a soft spatula, I'm just going to toss it around literally just a few times. I'm going to give it a really good shake at the end because I just don't want to break up those green beans. I mean, it'll be all right if you did, but it's not really ideal. So I'm going to spray a 9x13 casserole dish with some Pam. That way nothing will stick. I'm going to get everything dumped on in there, spread out just a tad, and then I'm going to tightly cover this with some tin foil, and it's going to bake at 400 degrees. The instructions say 40 minutes, and the potatoes will be done at 40 minutes, but I like to let this bake for a full hour. That way the potatoes are kind of creamy and just more to our liking. So that is all there is to it. It is delicious every time. I serve this with cornbread muffins that I had previously made and froze. So all I had to do was thaw those out and reheat it. So that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope that I was able to give you some helpful ideas. If you haven't already, I hope that you'll consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any videos. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.